The scent of old coffee and forgotten dreams clung to the flat like a stubborn ghost, a smell I used to find comforting, a sign of home. Now it just felt heavy, stale, a premonition I'd been too blind to see. It's funny, isn't it, how a place you built your life in can turn into a cage overnight? This wasn't just any flat, it was our flat. Marcus isn't mine. A shared corner of a sprawling city that we'd carved out for ourselves after university. And Sophie, she was always there, flitting in and out, her laughter echoing through the small living room, making it feel less like a bachelor pad and more like a home with a future. We'd known Marcus since our first year at Bristol, a lanky, quick-witted guy with an easy charm that always seemed to win people over. He was the kind of friend you trust with your last 10 quid, with your deepest secrets, with your life. He was family. When Sophie and I moved in together, Marcus had already been our third wheel for years, a benign, often hilarious presence. He was the one who helped me paint the kitchen a hideous shade of green, the one who'd fetch emergency takeaways after a row, the one who'd listen to Sophie dissect my shortcomings with an amused grin. There was never a moment, not a flicker, where I ever saw him as anything but my best mate, a loyal, unwavering constant in the messy kaleidoscope of young adult life. Sophie. God, Sophie. Her name still feels like a sharp intake of breath. We'd met at a friend's barbecue, her hair a riot of dark curls, eyes that sparkled with mischief and intelligence. I was gone the moment she laughed at my terrible joke about bad puns. 8 years. 8 years of building a life, not just sharing one. We'd talked about the future, about a house with a small garden, about clumsy kids, and even clunkier retirement plans. We had inside jokes that nobody else understood, a language of glances and shared silences. Our relationship felt like an ancient oak, deeply rooted, weathered but strong, capable of withstanding any storm. Or so I thought. The first crack in the facade was so subtle I barely registered it. It was a Monday evening. Sophie had just come back from a long shift at the gallery, looking tired but beautiful. I was trying to cook something ambitious and failing spectacularly. Marcus walked in, saw the disaster, and without missing a beat, started teasing her about her choice of boyfriend, his hand briefly brushing her lower back as he passed to grab a beer from the fridge. She just smiled, a small, private smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I remember thinking, that's odd, but then the pan started smoking, and the moment was lost in the chaos. Then there were the late nights. Sophie had always been a night owl, but it started happening more often. She'd be working late at the gallery, or out with friends from her old university group. And Marcus, well, he seemed to be out a lot too. Our old routine of evening chats, watching whatever terrible reality TV show was on, slowly withered. I put it down to busy lives, the inexorable march of adulthood. We were all pushing 30. Careers were taking off, responsibilities mounting. It was natural, I told myself, for things to shift. But a little worm of unease started to burrow into my gut, a faint, persistent ache that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I started noticing how they looked at each other. Not directly, not overtly, but in those stolen glances across the living room, a quick flash of understanding that seemed to bypass me entirely. A shared laugh at a joke I didn't hear, a sudden silence when I walked into the room. It was like they were speaking a different language, one I was excluded from. My brain, bless its naive heart, tried to rationalize it away. They're good friends. They've always been close. Sophie and Marcus had always had an easy rapport, a banter that was sharper and quicker than mine. I'd always found it endearing, proof of how well my two favorite people got along. Now it felt like a barrier, a wall between me and them. One Friday, Sophie said she was staying at her sister's in Manchester for the weekend. Girl time, she chirped. You know how it is, just us two, catching up. I'd hugged her goodbye at the train station, feeling a pang of loneliness, but also a perverse sense of freedom for a quiet weekend. Marcus had planned to visit his parents in the countryside. I had the whole flat to myself. I spent Friday night ordering pizza, playing video games, reveling in the silence. Saturday morning, I decided to tackle the monstrous laundry pile that had accumulated. Sophie had a tendency to leave her delicates in a basket in her room, and I often just threw everything in together. As I reached into her basket, my hand brushed against something metallic and cold. It was a keyring, not her usual floral one. This was a heavy silver keyring, shaped like a tiny abstract fox. Marcus had one just like it. He'd bought it at some obscure design market years ago. He never took it off his keys. My breath hitched. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling. There was no mistaking it. It was Marcus's. My mind raced, a frantic hamster on a wheel. He'd lost his keys recently, complained about it for days. He'd said he'd found them eventually, in his jeans pocket. But this keyring was different. His original set had his old Ford Fiesta key and his work fob. This one just had a single, sleek house key. And it wasn't a key to our flat. It was too modern, too small. This was a key to her flat, Sophie's flat in Manchester. But she lived with her sister. They had a communal entrance, no individual keys like this. The cold dread that washed over me was absolute. It started in my stomach, a nauseating lurch, and spread through my veins like ice. I remembered the sister's flat in Manchester. I remembered Sophie talking about going there for a girls' weekend. I remembered Marcus saying he was going to his parents'. I remembered 100 little details that now clicked into place with sickening precision. The hushed phone calls, the sudden need for space, the late nights, the secret smiles. It wasn't a girls' weekend. It was their weekend. I sat there on Sophie's bed, Marcus's keyring clutched in my hand, the air thick with the smell of her perfume, a smell I now associated with betrayal. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. My best friend. My girlfriend. How? When? Why? The questions hammered at me, each one a fresh stab of pain. I picked up my phone, my fingers fumbling, and found his number. I stared at it, imagining his smug face, his easy laugh. I wanted to call him, to scream, to demand answers, but a deeper, colder instinct held me back. I wanted to know. I wanted proof, undeniable, irrefutable. I opened Sophie's laptop, which was always just left on her bedside table, password-free. We'd never had secrets like that, not really. My hand was shaking so violently I almost couldn't type. I clicked on her emails, her recent chats, anything. Nothing. She was too smart, too careful. But then I remembered something she'd once said about a travel blog she followed, a shared account. I found the tab open. And there it was, a message from Marcus, dated a few weeks prior. Hey Soph, just confirming our Manchester plans. Train tickets booked for Friday 6 p.m. Can't wait to see your face. Love you. Love you. The words burned into my retina. Love you. Not just a casual sign-off between friends, not a drunken mistake. This was a deliberate, intimate declaration. My breath left my lungs in a ragged gasp, my vision blurred. I scrolled further, a morbid fascination taking hold. There were other messages, fragments of their secret life. Did Liam suspect anything last night? He looked a bit off. Don't worry, he's too busy with work. We're safe. Missed you like hell today. Counting down the minutes till we're alone. Each word was a tiny shard of glass, embedding itself deeper into my soul. I felt like I was drowning, submerged in a cold, dark ocean of deceit. My world, which had been so solid, so certain, had just shattered into a million pieces. The flat, my home, felt like a crime scene, their crime scene. I stood up, walked to the living room, and just stood there, staring at the sofa where we'd all laughed so many times, where Sophie had leaned into my side, her head on my shoulder, while Marcus sat opposite, watching us with that easy, familiar grin. How many times had he sat there, knowing he was sleeping with my girlfriend, knowing he was gutting me from the inside out, piece by piece? I packed a small bag, mostly just essentials, on autopilot. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't breathe the same air they had tainted. I called my sister, Sarah, told her I just needed to get away, didn't elaborate. She didn't press. She just said, come over.
The spare room's ready. I booked a last-minute train ticket, left a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter for Marcus. I know. Don't wait up. I couldn't bring myself to address Sophie. Not yet. The anger was a slow-burning fire, but the shock was still a freezing fog. The train journey was a blur of gray landscapes and even grayer thoughts. I replayed every single interaction, every glance, every conversation. The times Marcus had seemed to subtly encourage Sophie to go out more, to live a little. The times Sophie had seemed to subtly dismiss my concerns about their closeness. Oh, Liam, don't be silly, he's just Marcus. The elaborate alibis, manufactured inconveniences. It was all there, laid bare, a meticulously constructed tapestry of lies. When I finally pulled myself together enough to call Sophie, it was Sunday morning. I was in Sarah's quiet garden, the chill wind cutting through me. Her voice, when she answered, was bright, cheerful, oblivious. "Hey, how's your quiet weekend? Mine's been lovely. Manchester was great." The casualness of her lie twisted the knife deeper. "Don't," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Don't lie to me anymore, Sophie." A pause, a beat of silence that stretched into an eternity. Then her voice, small, fragile. What are you talking about?" "Marcus's keyring," I said, "in your laundry basket. The messages on your blog. Don't insult my intelligence." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear the blood draining from her face. Then a choked sob. "Liam, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain, Sophie. It's all there. You and Marcus, my flatmate, my best friend, my home." Each word felt like an accusation, heavy with the weight of 8 years of trust. "How long?" She was crying now, truly crying. "Months. It just happened. We didn't mean for it to." "Didn't mean for it to?" I almost laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "You book train tickets, you write love you to each other, you spend weekends together in my absence, and you didn't mean for it to? Are you honestly that deluded?" "We tried to stop," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But you couldn't," I finished for her, the anger finally breaking through the ice. "Because you're both selfish, spineless cowards. Because you valued a cheap thrill over everything we built, over our friendship, over our life." She started to babble, apologies tumbling out, promises of it being a mistake, a moment of weakness, a plea for forgiveness. But her words were just noise, a discordant symphony of betrayal. I felt nothing but a vast, aching emptiness. The Sophie I knew, the woman I loved, had died on that train journey. "Don't bother coming back to the flat, Sophie," I said, the finality of my words shocking even myself. "I've already packed your things. I'll send them to your sisters. And tell Marcus I never want to see him again."
I hung up, my hand shaking now, a violent tremor that ran through my entire body. I stood there, phone in hand, looking at Sarah's perfect rose bushes, their petals dewy with the morning mist. The world was still turning, the birds were still singing, but my world had ended. The flatmate's secret, it wasn't just a secret, it was an execution of trust, of love, of the future I thought I had. And I was left standing in the rubble, the cold wind a stark reminder of everything I had lost. There was no going back, only forward, into a future I hadn't planned for, a future where the scent of coffee and forgotten dreams would forever taste like ashes.